Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, come on. Yes. 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 So you want to have that feeling all the time. You want to have your players developing fantastically on Football Manager. I do have bad news for you, though. That is not going to happen 100% of the time, ever. Sometimes the potential is an illusion. Sometimes players are just destined not to make it there because their hidden attributes are so far away from being where they need to be to reach that potential that you see. But this video contains everything we have learned through all of our training tests about developing players to the best of their and your ability. And because I'm me, I've broken this into sections. The first section is the importance of matches themselves. Now, you might be familiar with the idea that once players turn 18, matches are more important than training. They are a lot more important than training. If you are 15, 16, 17 years old, down here on the bottom part of a youth player's age graph, training is actually more important than matches. But once you go up to 18, it's all about actually playing and producing match ratings. Like, what's that actually mean, though? What it means is actually producing match ratings in matches, good match ratings in matches, and winning matches. That is what is the most important thing for development of a player at that age. But how much of the match do they actually need to play? That's a good question that you just asked me through the screen. Well, they just need to play 15 minutes to get a match rating. Obviously, you'd prefer they played the entire match and got a higher match rating, but if you sub them in with 15 minutes to go, they will play long enough to get a match rating. But keep in mind, if you sub them in the 75th minute, the change might not go through for 3 or 4 minutes. If the ball doesn't go out of play, then they won't get a match rating and you've completely wasted the opportunity. So around 70 to 71 minutes in is a good time to sub in any players you want to get out there for development purposes if you do not want to start them for the entire game. What if those players don't fit your senior team and for whatever reason you cannot loan them out, which, as you might have guessed, is the next section we're going to talk about? Well, that's where your reserve teams, your B teams, your whatever teams below your actual team you have at the club come in handy, because match ratings from those teams count too in winning and playing and putting out good match ratings. Those count towards development. So if you have a reserve team, an under 23s team, make sure it's got at least a good starting 11. If you are putting players on that team playing in a competitive league, the U23 Premier League or something, you want to make sure that you have a good starting 11 and about 13 to 17 players on that team. If you have too many, of course, not all of them will be able to play, especially if you're using it to keep up the fitness of your senior team. But these gray players here, they do not help you win and they do not help players get good match ratings. So if you have the means and you are using your reserve team and your U18 team to develop players, making sure that you have a good 13 to 17 players across that team is going to help you win matches and develop your players better and help them get good match ratings so that they can continue that important process of actually playing to get better at the sport. It's something that in the past I had not thought a lot about, but when you do think about it, it makes a lot of sense. And it is why when you look at the U18s team that I have with Floridsdorfer, which is my save on Twitch, if you want to watch that, the link is down in the description. We have a couple of senior players like Torbjornsson and Nazareno that I made available for the most recent match, but we have a good collection of like 19 guys on the youth teams, so we can help the few players down here actually get those good match ratings to develop more. And in the amateur team with players that are 18 years old, we can't loan out because of loan rules and regulations, we're seeing development as well. I still have not done a good job of filling out the entire team because this is something that I have just learned myself. What if you have the opportunity to loan these players out? Well, that's the next section that we're going to talk about. Loans. Loans. Oh, really passed out there. Nearly passed out. Okay. So for loans, there are 4 things to think about. Well, really 4 and then like an overarching theme. And the overarching theme is the actual rules of your competition, because these will dictate how effectively you can use the loan market. Now we're scrolling down in the Austria, what's the Admiral Bundesliga. And in the loan rules, we are only allowed to send 10 players out on loan in a season to domestic clubs. We're allowed to send 6 players out on loan to foreign clubs. So there are are restrictions and rules that limit how often, how in what volume we can loan players out both abroad and within our own country. This is the sort of thing that makes the reserve team important in the first place, because the most important thing when loaning a player out is the reputation of the league you are loaning them out to. The reputation you are loaning the player out to determines the quality of the league that they are playing in, and that is tremendously important. And of course, the number 2 tenet is they have to actually be playing. You want guaranteed playing time. Squad player only if that is the only thing you can get. Regular starter, important player, and star player, obviously all better in an escalating tier, so that that player can get as much playing time as possible, opportunity to accumulate those better and better match ratings. You want to see where a league's reputation is, all you have to do is go to the continent and view view the reputations of the different leagues. We're 10th right now at 3.5 stars, and loan them out that way. The third tenet, the training facilities. Youth facilities don't matter. Training facilities of the club you are loaning the player out to. These also affect the ability to develop. I mean, it's like the difference between training every day on a random park and training every day with a specialized ball machine to fire things at you from 360 degrees so you can improve your first touch. Like, that is variety here. So the best training facilities you can possibly send your player to are also going to help their development. Now, there is something super cool if you go to staff responsibilities, transfers, and contracts and offer to clubs. If you go down here, you can set your outgoing developmental loans for senior squad, for my amateur team, which would be your reserve team, the U18s team. You can set the salary percentage, the playing time you would accept, if you have any particular nations or leagues you'd want to loan that player out to, and you can set the baseline facilities that you would accept. It starts with a 1/2 star, full star, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5, 5. You can count all the way up from the bottom, figure out exactly which type of facility you'd be willing to accept as part of your loan, and set all of those so that when you go to a player on your senior squad and you look to offer out to a club, all of those things are already set. And of course, if you have them in your reserve team and what have you, you can also go to that reserve team and use the first team settings for loans, and that is basically what I'm just going to set up to have ticked. And I want the facilities to be at least great. So, haha. What's that final tenet? This actually doesn't have anything to do with player development. It has to do with the way other teams scout. If you realize a player is not developing well enough and is not somebody you want to keep around, consider loaning them out to the second division, or if you're a big enough club, to the top division of one of the major 5, 6, or 7 leagues. Go somewhere with money that people are scouting, especially if you are in a smaller country, or myself, I'm in Austria. It's not necessarily a place that everybody in the world is scouting. If I loan somebody out to the second Bundesliga, that player is going to be on a lot more scouting radars and will be easier to sell in the future. This is the tenet of unloading players that you just don't like. Your extra considerations are that adaptability of a player is important. So if you sign somebody and they have really poor adaptability and you know this, try to loan them out within your country or back to the country they came from so that they don't have to adjust to a new environment. And of course, all of this is a lot easier if you get a good affiliate. Now, I have an affiliate, second division of Austria, that I can throw players at. These do count against my domestic loan players on the competition requirements that we looked at earlier, unfortunately. But if you find good affiliates that have good training facilities, good reputation, whatever, and can help you develop players, that just makes it really easy for you to know exactly where you're going to be able to unload these players you are trying to develop, because they aren't going to get playing time at your club, but they are too good to be playing in your reserves either. Affiliates really just help protect you from ending up with a bunch of players that you don't want wasting away in your reserves when they have the quality already to be playing at a higher level and you know it. Kind of like NordVPN. Now, NordVPN helps keep you safe on the internet, which is getting increasingly more difficult every single day. Not only does it keep you safe, it also gives you the opportunity to watch your favorite sporting events around the world by VPNing into that particular area. What is a VPN? It's a virtual private network. It allows you to route your internet traffic through somewhere else in the world. And even though it sounds super big-brained and high-tech, it's actually rather simple. It's the wonderful UI that NordVPN has put together, where you just click a drop down and select which country you want to route your internet traffic through to keep you safer. This is hugely important when you are dealing with internet that is public. Public Wi-Fi is very easy to rip your information off of. So if you're doing anything that you want to keep safe on public Wi-Fi, you need something like NordVPN. Or if you are traveling and travel a lot like I do, and you want to be able to watch American Netflix while you were away, NordVPN can help you do that sort of stuff. And you can do it with an extra month free. You get an exclusive deal with the link down in the description, the 2-year plan with a month free. And let's say you don't like it, or you're not traveling much anymore, or I don't know why you wouldn't like it, but it's a 30-day money-back guarantee at the link down in the description. So be sure to check that out. And we thank NordVPN for being a longtime sponsor of this channel and having the dual-wielding effect of allowing us to hire more editors like Eyal, and being a good product for you guys to use and stay safe on the internet. But now for section 3, this is the actual training part. Then there's going to be something right off the top that's very important. Every single player needs to be on a position, role, and duty in training. This is why you need to take control of your training on your reserve team, on your youth teams. You need to go into the individual training of each of these players and make sure that they are playing in a specific position and role. This can be the same position and role that they are already playing, right? This is not about them learning a new position and role. It is about them training a specific position and role, because that maximizes the time that they spend training. They're not doing that. They literally just skip certain parts of training. Another thing to keep in mind is before a player turns 18, they're developing so rapidly, do not add player traits. After they turn 18, you can start training player traits, but it does distract some focus from other parts of training. So make sure it's something that they really desperately need, because players that are 18, 19, even 20, 21 years old, they're still in with a lot of chance to improve. So you don't want to distract them from training too much by adding 85 player traits. But once they turn 18, the training team that we've put together recommends at least starting to do those player traits if you feel like they're really going to help their game. Say a winger that can't really dribble but's incredibly fast, or maybe a fullback that's the same thing. Knock the ball past opponents, going to make them a lot better. Or a striker that doesn't have a finishing trait, like shoots with power, or takes first time shots, or places shots. Well, then you probably want to train one of those on. If you don't know which one, we do have a video we made a little while ago about how to make the most of your strikers. I recommend checking it out. There's also the key element that I've talked about multiple times of praising and yelling at players for their training performances. Above a 7.75 or at a 7.75, you praise them for good training. Below a 6.5 and at a 6.5, you yell at them for poor training. You can also do this with match results, especially important for players over the age of 18. If they play really well, you praise their performance. If they play poorly, you yell at them. Maybe you even fine them for a particularly poor performance. Those fines in particular can actually increase the work rate of a player, which not only makes them play harder in matches, it makes them train harder as well. As for the additional focus that you could be working on in training, some players, depending on their mental attributes, will not want to have an additional focus because their training intensity is simply too high already for their hidden attributes. But the additional focus can be on something that you feel like they need to improve, or something that you want to make great. Now, your coaches will come to you in the coaching meeting and they'll go, "But sir, he's not bad at that anymore." And you just go, "I don't care. That's not the point," right? Like, that's the whole conversation. Now, if the player comes to you and says it's not producing results, wait and see if it does actually produce results. If it is producing results, let them keep doing it. If it isn't, then change it. And then you work on changing the mentality of that player. But before you do that, make sure that in training and on rest, you have double intensity for the full heart. Double intensity for the full heart. This is going to help your player development a lot. But the final section, and the one that might actually be the most helpful for y'all, is mentoring and which group to put your youth players in. I couldn't think of a shorter title. So the actual training portion might feel rather simple, but that's because there's so many other factors that are affected, and there are only so many levers in this section that you can actually pull. But mentoring is where you can kind of value hunt. So the average registration for a league team, not the average registration, but a common registration, would be 25 players. You get to register 25 players for your team. It does not make sense to use those last 3 spots, assuming you have starters and backups at every position, which is 22 players. Those last 3 spots shouldn't be youth players over the age of 18, because they're not likely to get a lot of playing time. How do you use those last 3 spots? On high reputation, high personality old players. The high reputation puts them high up on the hierarchy, which means they're more influential for mentoring groups, and the better personalities, well, that allows them to mentor more effectively, because better personalities and media handling style mean that players have better hidden attributes. That's why in the Zealand skin we see both of them, the personality and the media handling style, fairly professional, level-headed, good indications of professionalism on 21-year-old Bojan Brodnjak. But you can use those last couple of registration spots to get mentors. And those mentors, say one attacking, one defending, and one goalkeeper, then stack 3 to 4 players below them that you know have worse personalities and media handling style. Oftentimes you want these to just be players that are already in your first team, and of course they must be under the age of 24 to be effectively mentored. So these are the young hotshots on your first team. And you'll see the older players, Zan Rogel and Pablo Rodriguez, are getting no effect, while Arling and Ulrik Torbjornsson are getting significant estimated effect from the group from 2 of the more influential players in the team, particularly team leader Pablo Rodriguez. Actually going to make him the only person mentor. Good time to mention that the older a player gets, their professionalism goes up over time. So older or very old players are naturally going to have more professionalism than younger players. You know, even if you can't see it and they're balanced and it's under 14, it's still likely higher than those other players, because in our tests, professionalism goes up steadily throughout a player's career. Obviously, it doesn't help their youth development, because by the time it's going up, they're already done. And at this point, then you start to wonder, well, why don't I just bring up all of my really talented players from the U18s, from the reserve team, and put them in the senior team just for mentoring? Only do that if it's going to be a massive hindrance to their development. And I'm talking, determination's more important than it has been. So if they have a really low determination, if they have poor pressure handling, if their professionalism is very low, if you see a bad personality, a bad media handling style and personality, then you want to bring them up to the senior team for mentoring purposes. If not, it's better to keep them in the U18s or the reserves unless they're going to get regular playing time in the first team. Because, well, a couple things. One, if you keep them in the first team and then make them available for matches in the U18s, then you have, let's say you have a week. Here's a week training schedule. And on Monday, you're training, on Tuesday, you're training, and on Wednesday, there's a U18s match. You make the player available for that U18s match, so they don't train that day. Thursday, Friday, and then your senior team's got a match on Saturday. They don't play in that match because they played on Wednesday and they're not good enough to play on Saturday, but they don't train that day either. So you can see how you're missing an extra day of training by putting these youth players in your senior team. Now, if you're a small club with just a couple developing youth players, it makes sense because you save money on not buying a staff or a whole team of players for your U18s or your reserves. But as that training schedule shows, it is detrimental to their development in the same way, because they also miss an extra day of training, which, especially if they're younger than 18, is very important. Not to mention, the coaches you hire on your U18s and your reserve team usually have higher working with youngsters than your senior coaches, which makes them better at working with those youth players. So only bring those players up to the senior team if they need the mentoring or they're going to be regular first team players. If not, the U18s and the reserves are not a bad choice, as long as you've got at least 13 to 17 or 18 players there so that they can get those good match ratings, those full training sessions. Everything is good. Everything's cooking. But this brings us to the last point. What training are those youth teams doing? Well, you're in luck. We have created a training regime not only for your reserve team, but also for your youth team as well. At Floridsdorfer, I have a U18s team, which means basically everybody here is younger than the age of 18, which means I can do specific training that is designed to actually just develop them instead of trying to get match buffs in like we do with the senior team, which is another reason to keep your players in the youth team longer. Now, in the reserve team, oftentimes your reserve team will be competing in like actual competitions. I mean, in the Checkatrade Trophy in England, there will be actual competitive matches that are important for development. They provide a really big stage and a higher reputation competition for your players to play in. The youth team training we have designed for reserve teams, or as the team calls it, leagues with competitive matches, reserve squads and lower leagues, B teams, those sorts of things, that is going to include match boosts. This is our example basic training for youth teams that do not have important matches to play. You start with some physical, then you also want to make sure that each day is themed. So you've got your defending, you've got your attacking, you've got technical day, you're also working your goalkeepers as well. But this is broad. What if you have a couple of specific players that you want to help develop? Like, say you have 2 really good strikers in your youth team. We have created 3 specific training schedules as well for those youth teams where you can focus attacking players, midfielders, and defenders with those 3 different schedules. Now, all 5 of these training schedules will be linked down in the description, both the Steam links if you are on Steam and the links to stuff on FM Base if you are not. And I do realize that this requires a lot of micromanagement. You do not have to do this to successfully develop players. This will also help you better develop players. So you can do it if you want. It will help you more, but you have to take control of all of your youth team training, obviously, to be able to put this stuff in place. And I will leave you with the last piece of knowledge about developing youth players, and that physical attributes develop the quickest, then technical attributes, then mental. So do not get frustrated if the mental or the technical are moving a little bit slower than the physical. That's the way the game is designed and kind of the way real life is designed as well. And you now know everything that we know about developing youth players in Football Manager. So take from it what you want, make your youth players better, and get those beautiful, beautiful upwards arrows. If you want to watch another installment of this training series, it is an entire series, then please check out this video talking about the best way to train for your senior team, which obviously we didn't touch on in this video.